Well, let's continue with the Brexit theme, and I'm joined now by the leader of UKIP, Gerard Batten, and the former Deputy Director of Britain's Stronger in Europe, which campaigned for Remain in the referendum, Lucy Thomas. Good to see you both. Thank you very much for being with us. So, Gerard, today was the day, wasn't it, that we were meant to be leaving the EU in, 2 hours, 15 minutes? Do you sometimes wonder if we'll ever leave?
I do believe that we will leave. I don't believe we'll leave under the current Prime Minister or the current government or Parliament, the way it's constituted, because they don't want to leave. It's as simple as that. We've gone about this entirely the wrong way. First of all, we should never have gone down the Article 50 road to start with. Secondly, when you've got a government and a Prime Minister and a Parliament that doesn't want to leave, then it's very difficult to actually make it happen. That's the big problem that we had. This was put to the British people because the political class couldn't resolve the issue of the European Union over the previous 43 years. So they were forced into a referendum by the UKIP electoral threat, said that they would abide by the result. Everybody said that. Everybody who fought in the 2017 election, well, certainly Conservative and Labour, said that they would implement the result of the referendum. And then since then, they've done everything they possibly can to delay it, impede it, in the hope of eventually overturning it, and that's where we are now.
Lucy, where do you think we are now, and what do you make of what happened today?
Well, I think there are a lot of people who are making the perfect the enemy of the good. You know, you have a lot of Brexiteers who could have taken the opportunity to vote for the withdrawal agreement, that's the divorce out of the way, and then you negotiate about the future trade arrangements. And yet they are saying it isn't the perfect deal, so we're not going for it. And then on the other side, you have some Remainers and others who think it's so awful we need to have another referendum, or we want a soft deal or something, and you end up with total stasis. And I would challenge what Gerard said. I think the government has tried to leave. I don't think they don't want to leave. They've negotiated over the last 2 years a withdrawal agreement, but it just so happens that Parliament doesn't think it's the right one.
I think what they've done is they've actually gone to the European Union and Mrs Merkel and said, how can we work with you to make sure this doesn't happen? I think that's much more than likely what's happened. If I can take this divorce analogy, which I don't accept, actually, we're never married to them, so it isn't a divorce. The whole thing was unlawful to start with. But if you take the divorce...
We had a referendum to choose to go in, by the way.
No, we didn't. We had a referendum in 1975 to ask us if we wanted to continue membership, which the British people were never consulted on. I'm old enough to remember it.
But we could have voted to come out at that point.
We could have done, but that was a long time ago. The whole thing has completely changed, the way it's developed. But on the divorce analogy, if I can use it, what Mrs May has negotiated is a kind of divorce deal where you live in the same house, you pay the bills, you sleep in the same bed, and you get joint custody of the liabilities. It doesn't sound like much of a divorce to me.
So what would you, if you'd been an MP, what would you have done today?
If I was Prime Minister, I tell you... Oh, sorry, I'd much rather play fantasy Prime Minister. But I would have voted against it because Mrs May said herself many times, no deal is better than a bad deal.
You would have voted against
Absolutely.
Brexit? You would have voted against
No,
leaving.
I would have voted against this phony withdrawal bill.
But, Brexit may not happen. You know, it gets kicked into long grass 2 years down the line.
It is only going to happen one way, and that's the way I described in 2014 when I wrote a little book about this. Everything I said in that book has proved to be true about the way this has been delayed and impeded. If you wanted to leave, what you would have done the week after the referendum, and indeed you could still do it now, you could repeal the 1972 European Communities Act. You can say, we've now left under our law. We'll offer you tariff-free trade or WTO, your choice. We'll give you reciprocal rights on citizens. We're not going to pay you any more money, by the way. And then we start to unravel 46 years' worth of legislation. But we take control of that and we repeal and amend according to our priorities and we negotiate with the EU to say this is how it's going to happen. We want trade, friendship and cooperation, but we set the pace, not you.
Lucy, given the result of the referendum, is there any form of Brexit that you would accept, that you could live with?
Yeah, I mean, ever since the referendum, I've been fairly pragmatic about it. I think it was, you know, a once-in-a-generation opportunity. We made that very clear on the Remain side, as did the Leave side. And so I think there is a duty to honour that and try and find a workable Brexit. My issue with Brexit in the first place was always that it was a very difficult thing to do. The UK is pretty much locked out of the decisions that the EU will make on our behalf in terms of what we end up with. But I think if there's a version that can protect the economy and jobs and, you know, science and collaboration and all those good things, then let's do it. I think there's a question about the legitimacy. Were we to get Gerard's preferred outcome, which would be a no deal. It's absolutely a question of whether that should go back to the people, because everybody was told during the referendum that there would be a deal. All the Leavers said, you know, we'll have the exact same benefits that we have today. So I think there's definitely a question if we're heading in that route.
Gerard, there was big protests, of course, going on outside Westminster today. UKIP had a lot of support out there. I just want to ask you about your comments about water cannon, because you suggested that the police were going to use water cannon against pro-Brexit campaigners.
What I said was, I was getting reports, which I did last night, that 6 water cannon were on the motorway down to the UK. Now, I understand subsequently from what I've been told today is that they may actually be with the military, and they may be being held at military bases outside of London.
Water cannon are banned, though, aren't they, in the UK?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know the Met Police haven't got any, which is why I queried this report when I first heard it. Right. Well, I don't believe anything the state tells me now. If you've got a parliament full of liars, why should we believe anything the government tells us or parliament? I don't believe that somewhere in the UK they don't store these things in the event of they're being required in emergency. I've had it reconfirmed to me today that they were on their way down towards London and that they do exist. And I've checked that with a source, and it is a very, very reliable source.
It can't be that reliable if they don't know that they're banned in Britain.
Well, if something is required, they'll unban it fast enough when they need to use it.
OK. All right. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you both very much on the day that we were meant to be leaving the EU. I appreciate your time, Gerard Batten and also Lucy Thomas. Thank you.